Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Connected Sessions. My name is Brian Banville. I'm the Career Services Manager here at Learn Academy. And it is great to see some familiar faces from our alumni, and welcome to those who are first-timers on Connected Sessions. As TJ mentioned, for those of you who are just joining, we are auto-muting everyone. But as questions and those types of things come up, please feel free to unmute yourself for questions. We will also be keeping track of the chat function for additional questions, so please feel free to reach out there. In addition, if there are any sort of technical snafus or anything like that, if you're having trouble with audio, video, anything, please let us know, and we'll kind of work through that. The best way to do that is through the chat functionality, and we will make sure to kind of address those as quickly as possible. And after that, we will also be doing some Q&A at the end. So please feel free to either save your questions for the end or type them into the chat function. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today, the CEO and co-founder of Learn Academy, Chelsea Kaufman, who is like really the expert on tackling imposter syndrome, and I am so excited about it because she gets so mad and uncomfortable about being called an expert in imposter syndrome, but she really is. So I'm excited for you guys today to hear her. And with that, Chelsea, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, oh my gosh, now I'm laughing. That's the worst because I'm about to tell you how I'm not the expert. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about some housekeeping things about the talk. This is the first time I've given this talk via Zoom, which I think is new to a lot of people. And I'm really used to this like give and take with the audience of learning from you and learning from me and having a conversation and a dialogue. And so the way that I'd like to continue to do that with this talk is if you feel comfortable, I really encourage you to turn on your cameras. And here's why. I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to give you details of my personal life and open up to you as much as I can. It's a lot easier to do that when I can see your faces. And I apologize if I look a little bit this way because you guys are over here and my camera's over here. But it is easier for me to see you connecting and smiling and nodding, laughing, or squinting your face when you're like, what the heck is she talking about? Please explain that better. That being said, if you don't want to use your camera, here's some other things that I do ask of you. Please do use that chat, not just for questions, but if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation or anything that you want to throw out there, feel free to keep that going. And Brian and the rest of the team will kind of keep an eye on that as well. The other thing I want to do is please use the reactions. So down at the bottom of your screen, there's a reaction button where you can give thumbs up, you can clap. So even if you just hear something that you're like, oh my gosh, I totally feel that, hit that thumbs up button or the wave or something, just to show me that you are resonating with what I'm saying and things like that. I will ask for some participation and we can kind of feel out how that goes. I know everyone's on mute right now. So we may kind of play with that, maybe raising hands and things like that. If anyone has anything that they want to share, things like that. Okay, so that's just some little basics here. And I just now realized I wasn't even sharing my screen. You guys can't even see what I see. Cool. So let me get everyone back to where I want them to be. Perfect. Now I can see your faces. Great. All right. So we're going to talk about navigating your imposter syndrome, specifically in this virtual world. Now that we've gone into quarantine, we're spending a lot more time online. I don't know about you, but I'm on my feed way more than I was before. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the other ones that I don't understand. And I think that they are, me personally, you know, causing me to kind of feel certain things. And I want to kind of talk through that with all of you. So I want to do a little question and answer. And so those of you that have your cameras on, I encourage you to raise that hand up like this. If you don't have your cameras on, please use that raise hand function in the reactions section. So how many of you have just heard of imposter syndrome before? Great, that's excellent and not excellent. So how many of you would say that you either yourself or somebody that you know has struggled with it? For sure. If you can see what I can see, almost every hand is raised, I think is important. Now, to kind of focus in on what we're talking about today, how many of you are feeling it more now in these times of online extravaganza than you did before? About the same? Thumbs up. Cool. All right, last question. So how many of you feel like you have the like tools or strategies to kind of work through your imposter syndrome? Yeah, all right, kind of, sort of. What's exciting about that is as we go through this talk, I want you to think about those things that you've used in the past, and maybe there's something that I say, or you know, something that that reminds you of something you've done in the past. I really want to encourage everyone to kind of share their own experiences as well, especially when it comes to how you've worked through these things, because the thing that I've learned the most in giving this talk is that the more that we share, the more we learn. And the more we can get better at working through these things. Great. So now for the hard part. Let me talk about me. So as we'll hear, one of the things that is the hardest thing to do is to learn how to talk about yourself and talk about your accomplishments, talk about the things that you've done. So this slide is actually the hardest slide through my entire talk for me for that reason. You know, some of you know me. I've given this talk several times before in different arenas with different audiences. Every single time, the week before, a few days before, in this case, last night, I was sitting there going, what in the world do I have to add? I don't have anything else to add. There's nothing, like, I don't even know what, they're not going to learn anything from any of the things I have to say. Like, giving myself all this negative self-talk and all these things. And I understand that there's this weird world that I have an imposter syndrome about my imposter syndrome talk. It happens every single time I've given this talk, and really almost any talk that I've given at different arenas or conferences, things like that. But despite what Brian said, I'm not an expert. I am not a psychologist. I am just a person who has experienced this and feels that it is really important to talk about it. That it's important for me to talk about it to help me get through my own imposter syndrome. And in that, hopefully encouraging other people to talk about it so that they can find the tools to work through it themselves. So not an expert, just somebody that wants to facilitate a conversation so that we can all continue to get better at working through this and feeling good about what it is that we're doing in this world. So, as Brian said, my name is Chelsea Kaufman. I am the founder and CEO of Learn Academy. My contact info is on there. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat after the talk as well. But my story, so about 5.5 years ago, I quit my job. I completely changed industries. I was working in the arts, in the performing arts, a lot in arts education and nonprofit, business development, things like that. And I quit, started my own company in the tech education realm. And a lot of you know Learn. A lot of you have either gone through Learn or are currently going through the program. But when I first started, technology was not my focus. I wasn't a programmer. Technology has always been a part of my life. I would say that I was always the person in the organization that was updating the website and like doing all those little things, but it was never my main focus. And so when I made this shift and we started building Learn, I had a lot of doubt that people were going to call me out because I wasn't a programmer, because technology wasn't my focus. And so I was constantly afraid in the first couple of years that people were going to say, well, why would we go there? Why would we be a part of the school? Why would we participate in this community? And it was something that I really struggled with for the first few years. I was worried about the companies. I was worried about students not trusting me. And it took a lot of looking at myself and going through the process that, I'm going to share a lot about how I've kind of worked through this throughout the years. So with Learn, we've had some great ups and downs. We've had lots of successes, and I'm beyond proud of the community that we've built. And I've worked through a lot of that imposter syndrome that I felt in the first few years of the company. But then 3 years ago, we had been in business for about 2.5 years or so. I got pregnant, and I was then a young female CEO in technology with a very young child. And that in itself was a new territory for me, that not only did I find some hurdles with being a mom in the space, but also just being a mom is something that you feel insecurities like I have never felt before. And so they were all new. All of a sudden, my imposter syndrome like spiked up again. Like, what do I know about being a working mom and trying to balance all these things? That there's all sorts of preconceptions about like what it is to be a working mom, especially in technology and in startups. And so I had to like work through all of that. And then, so I've been working through all of that. And then here we are today. We're in a global pandemic. We're all, on our computers more than we have before. We're in these Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds, watching everybody's perfect lives happen right before you. And you're sitting there going, oh my God, I'm not baking bread, and I'm not working out every day, and my children are not perfectly happy all the time. And so you just get into this bubble and you're like, what am I gonna do? And it's those feelings, it's that inner voice, it's that negative self-talk, that is my imposter syndrome. That, a lot of you also know that I had my second child in January. So also on maternity leave during pandemic and craziness happening. And so there was a lot of feelings and emotions going like this in the last little bit. So I thought that it was really important to kind of take this talk that I've given before and kind of reshift it with some of the new things that I've learned, and really just the new things that I'm struggling with in this new world that we're living in. Okay, there's my story. And now I just want to go into a little bit briefly, what is imposter syndrome? I know that a lot of you, I think all of you, raised your hand when you said that you've heard of it. But I just want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page about what we're talking about. So to me, imposter syndrome is a belief that you're inadequate, that you're incompetent, that that there's incompetent failure despite evidence that indicates that you are skilled and quite successful. A feeling that you don't belong. It's feeling like a fraud. And feeling like a fraud is a phenomenon that has plagued so many people, that this is not something that is new, that some very successful people have struggled with their own imposter syndrome, their confidence. The Sheryl Sandbergs of the world, I was even reading last night about David Bowie and somebody like that who has given so much to this world, struggling with his own confidence. Albert Einstein. People say that often people who are highly skilled or accomplished, that when you accomplish something, you actually tend to think that other people are just as skilled or just as accomplished, and then you spiral into these feelings that you don't deserve any of the accolades. That intelligent people are constantly trying to better themselves, so you're constantly kind of looking in and saying what is wrong so that you can move forward. And then you find yourself comparing yourself to different people. And I don't know about you, but when I read this list of here are all these people that have struggled with imposter syndrome, I immediately thought to myself, well, of course, they're so smart and I'm not nearly as smart as those people. And I just started comparing myself to them and was like, okay, this is, just another example of how we can all, I try and just catch myself every time I'm comparing myself to that other person. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the definition of imposter syndrome. And now I want to talk a little bit about this idea of the identification. How do we identify when it is happening to us? Because to me, we need to be able to identify it before we can go into how do we work on it. So there are three parts to me when we're talking about identification. There's the recognition and acknowledgement, and then symptoms of it. And so I want to talk through each of those. So the recognition and acknowledging. When I think of imposter syndrome, the thing that helps me the most is if I can recognize it as a state of mind and a feeling. I know that feelings don't define who I am, that is something that I've learned. I know that if I am angry, that doesn't mean that I'm an angry person. Just because I am currently feeling sad does not actually mean that I'm going to be sad forever. And so if I can think of imposter syndrome in that same way, then I can understand that it is something that is fleeting. It is a state at this time that this is something that I'm feeling. So recognize when it happens to us. So we need to learn how to recognize our imposter syndrome in the same way that you would recognize whether you're feeling mad or sad or anxious, or depressed, any of those things. And our feelings, they all manifest in different ways for different people. And learning to recognize that is key. And here's I know that I have had in my life, I've struggled with anxiety and depression in the past, and that I've found that it's easier when I can identify either those triggers or when I am physically manifesting something. If I'm feeling, okay, I'm overtired, I am, not seeing things straight. Right now I am so exhausted because neither one of my children are sleeping, and I feel like I haven't slept in 2 days. And so 3 days, I don't even know what day it is. And so you learn to recognize what it is when you're feeling that kind of anxiety. Can you guys think about those different emotions? And if you want to separate it out, not talking about imposter syndrome, but either depression, anxiety, maybe even just when you're happy or you're sad, can you think of things that you physically do that helps you to recognize that that's the feeling that you're feeling in the moment? Yeah, I see some head nodding. People are in it, they're listening, kind of. Okay. So you think that those are the things we want to be able to do. You want to find the things that, okay, these are the things I'm doing right now, and that tells me that I am feeling my imposter syndrome. And so therefore, I then want to do these things in order to feel better about myself and help me acknowledge and work through this problem. Just like when, you know, I'm feeling sad, you know, sometimes it's that just the feeling of like, I need to be by myself, or it's the literally tears running down your face seems like a pretty good indication of sadness. And there are certain things that I've learned over the time that make me feel better. Giving my little one a little hug, learning those different things that are like, if I do these things, they make me feel better. So the idea is we want to recognize imposter syndrome as a feeling, just like we do with these other things, and come up with the tools to help us work through it. So let's talk about this virtual world, because I think that it has amplified everything. It is a new territory. I think that a lot of us are experiencing heightened imposter syndrome while being in this quarantine. That, you know, I think we talked about, so the comparing yourself to everyone online, that like people are posting things. I've even caught myself posting things and thinking about, I need to do it in this way so that people see that, you know, they see my happy kids and they see that like I baked the perfect thing. And I catch myself creating and curating these like perfect posts, and I'm constantly, the word that always catches me when I'm looking at different things is that I am not enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not, I'm just not enough. I'm not, you know, as we said, I'm not baking, I'm not exercising, I'm not the perfect mom, I'm not, you know, fill in the blank of all the things. We see, we're seeing people, no, go back. We are not seeing people in the real environment. So we don't see the ups and downs anymore. We're not going to the office and seeing that like people are having bad days or that they're working through. All that is like hidden in these little houses. And so we're only seeing curated lives because we've cut ourselves off from the things that are real. And so it is making us really question our own sense of reality, because we aren't able to see those ups and those downs. I've been trying in my own like curation of my life online to post more things that are like not making it a balance of things. Like, here are things I'm struggling with, here's things I'm excited about, and here's just some like mundane things to kind of like show and do, I don't know, my part of like, hey, look, it's not all like cupcakes. And I don't know why I keep talking about bread. I'm been gluten-free for like 8 years and I don't even eat bread. So maybe it's because I'm watching everybody make the sourdough and I'm like, I can't even eat it, you guys. It's awful. Anyway, so I think that this virtual world makes it even more important for us to recognize when we are feeling these insecurities, so that we can either maybe disconnect from what it is that is making us feel that way, or recognize that we're feeling that way and do the things that make us feel real and alive again. So let's talk a little bit about some of the symptoms of imposter syndrome, when we can really like recognize when it's happening to us. So to me, it really and usually rears its ugly head around notable accomplishments. So when you you've won an award, or you earned a promotion, or you graduated from a really awesome coding boot camp in San Diego, you can often find yourself justifying those successes that like I did it, it was everyone else, like someone else helped me. It wasn't, you know, like, oh, it's no big deal. So catching yourself kind of blowing those things off and not like living in that accomplishment, I think is something I personally have found myself doing, that anytime something good happens, I almost always justify, well, it only happened because I met this person, or, you know, it belongs to other people and not me. And so that is another way that you can kind of recognize some when it's happening to you. It can also happen and keep you from participating in things, possibly thinking that you can't bring anything to the table, that I won't participate in a conversation because I don't have any value to provide. Maybe it's that you don't go to a meetup or you know, a class because you don't think that you have anything to add, or that your voice wouldn't be heard. So it's keeping you from doing all these things because you are doubting yourself, and that you're doubting your own value and your own voice and your own experiences and what they bring to the table. And in that, like the same as like lowering your standards or setting a low bar, to me, I do this often, but like if I set that low bar, then I can easily just jump over it. I don't have to worry about it. And I've made the easy accomplishment. I'm not stretching. I don't have that fear of failure, but that's really kind of taking something away from me, that reaching for something, and honestly, that failure that makes us better. And failure, if we can switch the way that we think about failure as something that helps us grow, if you can think back on times that you have easily succeeded in something, it was easy, you breezed through it, it was great, you got it done, I would imagine that you did not grow and learn from that experience, that you grow and learn so much more when you are working and struggling through something, or even as far as failing on something, that you have gotten back up, that you've learned something, you've shifted, you've pivoted, you've done something to kind of help yourself move forward and learned through that. And so when you're lowering that bar, you're taking that away from yourself. You're giving yourself that easy layup. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I just need those easy layups to like get me up in the morning. So I fully admit that sometimes you need them. But if you're doing that all the time, or if you can be taking back from allowing yourself to really grow, or then maybe you're, you know, not applying for that job because you don't feel like you're fully qualified for it, and that you're taking that opportunity away from yourself by not even trying, and not asking for that promotion, not submitting a talk or presentation or things like that because you're afraid of that failure. And the last part of this I want to talk about is burnout. And at first, it took me a while to kind of understand how burnout was connected to imposter syndrome. But to me, the people keep pushing to get where they need to go. If you're always thinking that you're not doing enough, and you're always keep going and you keep moving forward, that is what can lead to burnout. If you haven't noticed already, all of my quotes are from Brene Brown. So I'm going to read this one because I think it's particularly important. So she said, "You might think if I'm not busy, it must mean that I'm not productive or relevant. That sense of vulnerability is a big reason why people stay on the hamster wheel. To really recover from burnout, we must change not just our schedules, but also our thinking. We must accept that what we produce and contribute is not our value, and get clear what is." So that idea of being on that hamster wheel and constantly going and going and going, it's just adding to that idea that those achievements is what your value is, and not true. So let's move into the next step. So taking action. This is the part that's hard because it requires us to be more vulnerable. And to be honest, putting this talk together and giving it the times that I have has helped me with my own imposter syndrome more than anything. And not because I go into a room and like toot my horn about how amazing I am, but more that I get to be in a room with a bunch of people that are struggling with the same things, that are like, I get to see your little faces nodding along with me, that I know that I'm not the only one, and that I know that by talking about it, we can help find those actions. So so the first thing we're going to dive into when dealing with it is just the idea of talking about it. And this is why I'm here. This is why I do this talk so many times. I'm not an expert. I'll keep saying that. I'm just somebody that has experienced these feelings firsthand, and thinks that the best thing that we can do is help people is to talk about our experiences so that they feel like they're not the only ones going through it. And that we know, and that we can try and look at it as just a feeling, and that this feeling is not permanent. So just like when I know that I am feeling frustrated, that talking something through with somebody is the only way that I'm going to get to that other side and feel good about it. So for me, finding that support group is really important, to surround myself with people that I feel like I can go to when I need to. So having that group of people to talk to. And I also think that it's really important to create that space so that that it's a give and take, that giving people other space to talk about what it is that they're working through. And I've been trying to actually talk about it more online. That like when, I think it was last week, I posted something on Facebook about I was just struggling last week. I was working on some really big projects. I had a lot of things coming at me. I was working with a 2.5-year-old that was having nightmares and like just all over the place. And I posted online and was like, guys, I can't focus. I don't know what to do. I had like 85 people comment on this post, giving me really great suggestions. And some of them great suggestions. Other people were like, you can do it. And so it took me a really long time to just post it, because I don't know what I was thinking people were going to say or why I felt doubt, but I did. I just posted it, and honestly, it made me feel better throughout the day. It was so fun to kind of get these different people, and I think people really, people that I hadn't talked to, and I don't even know, somebody from high school posted on it, which was too many years ago for me to think about. And so I think it was just a matter of kind of showing people what is real and what's not real. And I think that we can balance those things, especially online, because some of those crafted posts that we put out there, sometimes my kids are great and perfect and wonderful, and I take those pictures I'm going to put out there, but often they are not. And working through that, I think, and trying to find those spaces where you can balance, because I think it'll help other people see and reach out to you, and you get this good kind of back and forth with it. And in that same vein, this idea of finding your tribe, everyone has something to contribute. Every single one of you has a voice and a background that is going to add to the conversation, any conversation. We've, over the last, 5.5 years, Brian can tell me because I won't get the number right, but we're almost at 400 graduates. Yes, he's nodding. That's a good number. Great. Of people who've gone through our program and are transitioning their careers, that we are often talking about these insecurities, these dealing with our confidence and things like that, because they're doing a lot of the things that I did, that they are, you know, quitting their jobs and they're and making these big transitions in their lives, and that there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of like back and forth as they're learning something new, as they're getting into a new community. And so one of the things that we've tried to do in our cohorts is kind of create this micro group of people that are going to go through this thing with you, so that you have somebody, you have people that are working through this really hard thing alongside you, and often feeling a lot of the same things that you're feeling, which goes back to that other slide. You have to talk about it, otherwise no one will know, and then no one is moving forward. And so at Learn, we've been able to kind of create these micro groups of people that are kind of going through the same thing. So I encourage all of you to kind of do your best to find the people that you connect with, and also recognize that you yourself are your best cheerleader. And the more we can get that into our heads, that we can be the person that is going to cheer yourself on, just like you would cheer on your best friend from 5th grade, right? That like remembering what it was like to have that person that you would cheer them on no matter what. There is no reason why you can't do that for yourself. And that identifying that in yourself and not feeling bad about it, feeling good about it. That promoting yourself and talking about yourself is one of the hardest things to do, as I said in that first slide. And especially if you're on a path of transitioning your career, it is something that you're going to have to get good at doing. And I know how hard it is. I have gone through it. And so finding those people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can practice that elevator pitch, or just practice saying, I did something really great today and I am really proud. And that feeling good about that, not downplaying or justifying things, taking out the I thinks, these sort of, that it wasn't a big deal. Take that stuff out. Even if it's just you and one other person, you guys can go back and forth and just be like, here's something really rad I did today and I'm really excited about it. And some of the other talks, one of the things that I've suggested to people is that for a long time, there's this idea of the gratitude journal. And at the end of the day, you would write down whatever 3 things that you're really grateful for. Well, I said, forget that. Write down 3 things that you did today that was awesome. Just make it your awesome journal so that you can practice writing these things out. I did this today and I'm really proud of myself. I'm saying these things right now and I'm like picturing my husband Rob in the other room going, Chelsea, why aren't you doing that? And him laughing at me. So anyways, we all, like I said, we all have something to value. All of our backgrounds are different. If you are, you know, going into a new career that is new to you, that you're going to feel like you maybe don't have all the answers, that you don't bring anything to the table, but you bring something really important to the table. You bring a new perspective that no one on the team can bring. No one has your background in whatever it is, and you're going to look at things in a different way. And sometimes that's the most important thing, especially if you're coming into a group of developers who have been staring at the same code for the last like 5 years. You are going to bring something new to that table. So speaking of you, this last part is this idea of putting yourself out there. It's the hardest part, being authentic, position yourself for success. But you should always be true to who you are. That if you're failing, that you're learning, that you're real, that we all are going to fail, we're all going to work through things, and that those are the times that we really are going to come out better on the other end. The only way to really see something is to do it, to experience it. Reading about other people's failures and successes and things like that, it'll only go so far. the sooner that we can get into the room, the sooner we can start practicing having these conversations, whether it's just you and another partner, just practicing talking to each other and cheerleading each other on, and learning how to cheerlead for yourself. That firsthand is really important, is to do it. I'm going to say here that I have never been a big fan of the idea, the philosophy, I'm just going to fake it until I make it, which is something that people talk a lot about when it comes to imposter syndrome. It's really big for a long time. But the problem that I see with it is that I feel like it's supporting this idea that you aren't good enough, so you have to fake and be somebody else in order to, until you get to whatever that good enough is. And I think that that's doing a disservice. That I think that your experiences, you as they are good enough and add value. And that asking questions and being a part of the conversation is only going to make you and your team and everyone better. So when it comes to being online, I've also been, searching to find my own voice in this new world. And I often find myself in the same trap as everyone else, posting all those pics of my kiddos on Instagram. And so I just try and find the balance of what is real. Am I posting photos that like show all of my roles or my tears or my fears and all those things? Am I only posting things that just look perfect all the time? Am I adding to this conversation of just curated things, or am I adding something real? And so I'm just constantly kind of looking at myself and looking at my posts to try and see if I'm adding to the conversation or not. So I want to end before we get into questions with just another Brene Brown quote. If you don't know her, I hope all of you do. Go read all of her books, or watch her Netflix special or her TED Talk or anything. She's amazing. She actually is an expert. So there you go. She says, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. We don't want to hustle. We want to live inside ourselves and feel the true value of who we are, because we all have that value. And whether it's talking to other people and connecting with them, whether it's writing it down in your journal, whether it's doing, your exercises, going for walks, breathing, all those things, find those things that help you feel that peace and understand who it is that you are and what value you bring. Because I guarantee it, every single one of you had value to bring and have a voice at that table. So I'm going to end it there and just kind of open it up. I don't have the chat up right now, so I don't know if there were questions throughout. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to talk that through. Or I can ask questions if no one has.
We've allowed the audience. You can now unmute yourself. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and move forward with unmuting yourself.
Chelsea, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I think you somewhat addressed this with like the people who are in your camp. But what if you're trying to figure out something and you don't feel like you have those people in your camp? You're trying, like, something you're trying to navigate, and not to get like super crazy on this call, but with everything happening in the last 2 weeks, I think that for a lot of people, it's the wanting to sit and listen, but still wanting to engage and not sure who to reach out to, because feeling like it's not their responsibility to help you also process it. So do you have any advice for people of like where to go outside there, and even if it's uncomfortable, to find that support when you're feeling like an imposter?
Sure. I do think that there's something to finding and seeing other people online and finding the people, like if you are in any groups or online time that you can see how people are reacting to things and how people, the kind of language that they use. And I think that this is where it gets hard, because the only way that you really are going to find the people is that you have to be vulnerable yourself enough to ask, enough to reach out. And that sometimes I think that the easiest way to do that is to make it about the other person. That if you are going to them and asking them if there's anything that you can do for them, that just starts that conversation, so that, you know, down the road that you can then turn it into something that's back and forth. But for me, I have the hardest time making friends, and I have a very kind of small group of people that I would consider really close to me. And I think that what I've found as I have gotten older is the only way for me to kind of expand that and meet new people, or it is to ask people about their own lives and their own experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chelsea, Anne has a question, and Anne, feel free to unmute yourself if you would prefer to ask it, but I can also ask it for you. Do you find a difference between men and women in dealing with the issue of imposter syndrome?
Possibly. I would probably just say that everyone experiences it so differently. I do think that oftentimes the way that men can, and I'm like grossly, I forget the word, whatever. I think that they experience it. I think that they deal with it in different ways, and that they hide it in different ways. And I think that's true with all of us, right? Like all of us are going to experience it differently. But I think that oftentimes where I find myself as a woman backing down when I'm feeling imposter syndrome, I think that oftentimes men can go the opposite direction and be more overly confident, and are sometimes hiding their insecurities with that being overly confident with their own experiences and things like that, that it can sometimes come across disingenuous, and that I think that often, when they are overly promoting themselves, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words right now, but that I think that that is simply them covering up their own insecurities and things like that. So I do think that there's probably a difference, but I also think that there's just a difference in all of us, that we're all going to experience it in different ways, and we're all going to deal with it and need different things.
I think that's great.
And I think I saw a hand raised somewhere.
Yes, Heya has a question.
Oh, hey.
Hi, thank you for this talk. It's very timely. Actually started practicing showing my dark side, and I got my first rejection, which I'm really excited about, from a company that I interviewed and spent a lot of time doing their coding project. Posted on LinkedIn, people liked it, people gave me a lot of good tips, connected with 120 more people who sent me a request. Very happy about that. So I just wanted to ask, you yourself have switched a career, just like we are all trying to. So going from arts and performance to like tech industry, CEO position. So how do you balance kind of encouraging yourself to saying that you're, worthy? Of course, we all are. And then also kind of pushing yourself to be, have those technical and just experience level, skill and experience level that match, your expectations. You know what I mean? Like one is kind of like soft and one is hard, because we can also like really encourage each other, ourselves, but we also need to like do something to improve. So how what was your balance in that, and what was your strategy in that?
To me, I think that it was finding my humility in being able to ask questions when I didn't know the answer. So being honest about that part of it, that like when I didn't know what I was doing, I was going to find somebody that did and was talking to them and asking them about it, and being honest that and being okay with that. So balancing this, like, I know that I am still worthy and I'm still like good at this job, even though I have to ask these questions, because what I know is that by asking these questions, I'm just going to get better. And that I think that, you know, when you're, especially when you're interviewing and you're looking for a new job, you know, I know that Brian's talked about this a lot, but like finding the place that is going to help you to grow in your career is key. That when you're in those interviews, that if you are asking questions and they are maybe not helping you with the questions or not like working with you, imagine what it's going to be like working there for 8 hours a day. Like there's a good chance that they are not going to be as receptive then as they were in the interview. And so making sure that I can recognize when I don't know something, I am going to ask these questions and I'm going to work through it. And there's a confidence in knowing that I will work through it. And so the confidence is not necessarily in the facts that I know, but in the fact that I know I can work through it because I have before. And I know that all of you can, because I've watched you go through the program knowing very little and then knowing what you do today, right? So I know that there's that you know how to do that. And so finding the confidence and placing it there, as opposed to, I feel confident because I know XYZ. I feel confident because I know how to get to XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. A follow-up on that, when you say you found people to ask questions, like how did you find them, and who did you have a mentor? Like specifically, like how did you find people to ask questions?
Sure. So here's what I think about mentors. I definitely had them, but they were of all shapes, sizes, and experiences. I think that it's important that you have a variety of people that you can go to, that people that are, you know, at your same-ish level, people that were in your cohort are great ways to do peer-to-peer mentorship, which I think is so important. And then, you know, I went to a lot of meetups, and I gotta tell you, I hated going to all those meetups. They were so hard, and I just wanted to be in my pajamas. I wanted to be on the outside and just like stay by the wall and not talk to anybody. But I would give myself these little goals of like, okay, I just have to talk to one person today. And so I would go and meet that one person, and it was kind of a numbers game, right? Like when I first got into this, started make this transition, I went on so many coffee dates, so many. And some of them I still talk to, and some of them I don't. Some people I know that I can reach out to, even though it's been a couple years, and say, hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think about that? And so it's a matter of, to me, it was a lot of numbers. It was a lot of like figuring out who would be the best person for, you know, learning the different aspects of the business or the community or things like that. And so I drank a lot of coffee, a lot of different people, and slowly got it down to like, okay, here's the people. And you know, like you get in these meetings and all of a sudden one of them will last like 15 minutes and you're like, okay, great, that was awesome. And then you go to another one and it's like 4 hours long and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. It's just like dating. I don't know, you know, you just go through a lot of people.
I like that. It's like speed dating.
It's like speed dating.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to do Zoom dates instead of coffee for now, but I'm down for that. And thank you again for like making such a genuine talk, because I feel like it's really easy to have like a kind of cold cliche talk about imposter syndrome, but as everything you do and like learn itself, I like how real you keep it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Chelsea, we have time for one more question. So if anyone has any other questions, please feel free.
I do.
Yes, go ahead, Zena.
Hello, everyone. I have a question. Chelsea, how do you deal with imposter syndrome feelings right now?
How do I do?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what I did last night as I was preparing for this talk. One, for me, I knew that part of it was that like I was feeling insecure about this talk. So I went into it and I did the work. I went through my slides, I went over some of the things and I like focused my attention on that, and that helped me to feel better. The other thing I did is I went and ate a piece of birthday cake and talked to Rob and was like, my husband, and was like, dude, I got to give this talk. I'm having a hard time with it. And he just asked me some questions. And part of it was that like, obviously he and I have worked together for a long time and been in a relationship for a long time. And so we know how to kind of help each other out in that way. One of the things that I also have a close friend of mine who I would call my cheerleader. And anytime I just need someone to tell me I'm a badass, I just call her and say, Colleen, I just need a little bit of, she and I have worked together for many, many years and we're not anywhere near the same industries anymore, but that we both know that how wonderful the other person is, and we just remind each other of that. And so those are some of the things. Also, just it helps for me. Like I went through my talk, I wrote down a lot of things and just kept writing to just get it. It's almost like you just got to get it all out, right? Like when you're angry or upset or sad or something, for me, I just got to get that energy out of my body. And so if that's writing or talking or moving, I was a dancer for a really long time. I recently, and I think this is because of all this craziness, I pulled out my tap shoes because let me tell you, stomping things out really helps. And it's also really funny to watch my 3-year-old pretend to tap too. So anyway, those are some of the things that I've like done recently that helps. But for me, it can be really physical, of like just physically getting it out of my body in whatever way that means.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. On behalf of everyone, I know that this talk, especially even for those who are on staff at Learn, we always love this talk because I think that we all feel it pretty regularly as well. Please feel free to connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn. Her LinkedIn URL is right there, so take a screenshot prior to us logging off today. And we look forward to all of you joining us on the next call. This has been recorded, so we'll post this to our YouTube channel. So if you don't follow us on YouTube, feel free to, so that you can always go back to this talk to be reinvigorated by Chelsea to kind of smash imposter syndrome. I like what'd you say? Stomp it out. I like that approach.
Yeah, tap shoes, stomp it out.
With actions. So thank you everyone so much, and we look forward to having you guys on the next one. Thanks everybody.
Thanks guys.
Bye everyone. Have a good Friday.
Thank you. Good to see all of you.
Love everyone. Nice meeting you, Sarah.
It was really good meeting you, Haya. First time.